All right.
Yeah.
We were talking about. Of course, you were very good friends with Robin Williams. And we were yes, and that was I was reading up on you, of course. And was he the one that kind of instructed you, like, come out to L.A.? You can definitely
he
start out.
introduced me to his management, and he encouraged them to take me on as a client, which they did.
Wow.
And when he was on, he hosted Saturday Night Live once in the '80s, and I think it was in the '80s. Historians will have to look that up. But I believe it was in the '80s. It was back when Eddie Murphy was still. It was the Eddie Murphy cast.
Oh, so definitely,
like '88.
And anyway, so he hosted Saturday Night Live in New York, and he brought me on just to do stand-up, which I don't think they've ever done that before or since.
No, just always musical.
Yeah, it's funny you say that.
Yeah,
Never saw
it. Robin brought me.
Wow.
And it was a nice thing. The truth is, I don't think most of my brethren would be doing stand-up were it not for Robin Williams, because he, he didn't invent stand-up. There's been stand-up since, before we came out of the caves, I think. But he really did reinvigorate audience interest in the form.
Yeah.
With that frenetic energy of his, he was everywhere. And he was exciting to see and fun to see. And he would go to clubs. I mean, he would have a job at some amphitheater somewhere. And then after he was done there, he would show up at Uncle Funny's Yuck House at 1 in the morning. And so people always had this feeling that, that they might see Robin Williams. And so people went to clubs a lot of times. They went out to, quote-unquote comedy clubs, which didn't even exist until Robin Williams was around. But they went out to comedy clubs hoping that they might see him. And while they waited for him, they enjoyed the rest of us.
And he was
that
one
really
of the...
was pretty much the dynamic. So I don't think most of us, of my generation anyways, would not be working, would not be making a living at this anyways, were it not for Robin.
Wow, and he was one of the core people that, like, you grew up with, like, how you started out?
Was he in your high school or your graduating class?
I started in Boston, and I took a Greyhound bus around the country to see what clubs were like in different cities, and I ended up in San Francisco where I stayed because I fell in love with the San Francisco audiences. And it was just a great place to develop as a comic because they were a very patient kind of a crowd. They didn't much care about your laughs per minute. They were really willing to, they liked the idea of someone sort of experimenting, and they liked to be in the laboratory watching. And they were very responsive to that energy. And Robin lived in San Francisco at the time. He was back and forth from L.A., but he lived in San Francisco, and so so I just sort of stumbled into where he was. And again, a lot of what went on in San Francisco was really created by Robin, not in a deliberate way necessarily, but because by the time I showed up, he was already a big star. He had already done Mork and Mindy. He was done with Mork and Mindy when I came. He was making Popeye when I arrived, I believe.
Oh, wow.
So it was quite a while back. But he was a very, very, very generous man, and not just to me, to everybody.
I gotta say,
he was more than any performer I can think of in a long time. When Robin died, it was a big loss for the world.
Oh, that's for sure.
Oh, dude, he had the likability factor that I haven't seen in any other celebrity. I mean, he did movies of everything. His comedy tours, his HBO specials are legendary. I love them. But no,
but he was. One of the things that came through was just that. He was just a lovable, fun, nice guy.
Definitely, absolutely,
and that contrary to what's popular now. Now you can be an asshole and people think it's great. I don't know why that is, but he was just not like that.
All right. Well, speaking of Trump,
yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that is right. And now people think, like, people say, well, he says what everyone's really thinking. Well, by the way, I don't know what everyone else is thinking, but he's not saying anything I'm thinking. And he's not saying anything that a lot of people I know are thinking. So that's kind of an odd idea.
It's a very strange
I
year,
will
Paula.
say that apparently he uncovered a great ugliness about our country, which is, I guess, a lot of people were thinking.
Yeah,
Not a majority, I would still say. Not a majority.